The 76ers are finally getting some positive news in what has been a very, very tough season. And I know it's been a disappointing couple of losses to the New York Knicks and the Orlando Magic, but in those games, Justin Edwards has been tremendous. He's playing well and he's proving he belongs in the NBA and in the 76ers rotation. And Paul George is finally starting to find his groove a little bit after a pretty inconsistent start to his tenure with the 76ers. So we're going to get into both of those topics here on the show. But before we do, I want to hear from you. Get down in the comment section for me right now and give me one word you would use to describe this 76ers season so far. I'm going to be in the comments section trying to reply to as many people as I can. So be sure to let me know what you think in the comments. For me, one word to describe the season, got to go with frustrating. I think that perfectly encapsulates from day one until now how the Sixers team has been and how I'm feeling about the season. So let's get right into it. Let's start with talking about Justin Edwards because I've been really impressed with what he's done over the past few games, finally getting an opportunity to show what he can do and be out there on the floor with all these injuries the Sixers have had. And over the last few games against the Thunder and against the Knicks, he's showing like, hey, I know I was undrafted and I was a disappointment after I was a top overall recruit in my class, but I could play a little bit. And I think he's shown Nick Nurse he deserves more minutes moving forward. And it started really against the Oklahoma City Thunder was kind of his breakout game and kind of his coming out party, if you will. And look, in that game, played 35 minutes and dropped 25 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 9 of 16 from the field. And what was impressive to me, 4 of 9 from 3. The three-point shot was something he's really struggled with going back to Kentucky. And so far in the NBA, in his limited minutes, it's looked pretty good, pretty smooth. He's shooting it with confidence. Now, I know that game was kind of a wash. Nobody played for the Sixers, and it was a blowout for the most part. So you might say, oh, there's not too much to take away from this game. But I think just him showing that level of comfort on offense and that ability from behind the arc is still a positive sign. And then against the New York Knicks, you know, the stat line doesn't jump off the page like it did against the Thunder. 10 points, 3 assists, 4 of 6 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3. But I thought just watching the game, especially in that fourth quarter, he really showed that he can be a impactful player in the NBA. And it wasn't just on the offensive side of the ball. Again, in that fourth quarter stretch, right, he had 8 points in that fourth quarter alone, including 2 big threes. And he was a big part of the Sixers coming back in that game and keeping things close where they eventually did lose in overtime. But he had to be out there to close that game down the stretch because of how well he was playing offensively, but also defensively. He did a really solid job guarding Jalen Brunson. They gave him that assignment. That tells me Nick Nurse has a lot of trust in him in the defensive side of the ball. And he did about as well as you could ask. You know, guarding Jalen Brunson is a tough ask for any player in the NBA, especially an undrafted rookie who's getting his first real minutes in the league. But all things considered, I thought he did a good job. He's tall, he's long, he can move his feet a little bit. He did a decent job of staying in front of him and just making things tough on Jalen Brunson, which is really all you can ask for from a player like Edwards. And he's gotten some high praise from his teammates and the coaching staff alike. Paul George was asked about Edwards' play, and he said he's just been ready. His name's being called. He's been ready to step up, especially in a time when we need him, you know, all the bodies we can get right now, and he stepped up. He's been playing well beyond his years. I've been impressed with him. He's tough, he takes a challenge, and he's coachable, man. He's like a sponge. He just absorbs all feedback, and he's been helpful. And then Nick Nurse as well, giving Justin Edwards his praise. It's super valuable for him to get these minutes. He's made a pretty big leap in a short amount of time here. He's just barely been on the roster, and what he did, played tonight, 35 minutes against tough matchups. He gives great effort. He has a good IQ. His scoring is decent. I think he's going to get better at that as he goes. And those are just super valuable minutes for him to play in a big game, a close game. That game against the New York Knicks, which of course was close down the stretch. And he was a big part of helping close out that game and send it to overtime. Even though they eventually lost, I still like what I saw. And remember, Justin Edwards, yes, he was undrafted, but he does have pedigree. He was a former 5-star recruit and was actually the number 3 overall recruit in his recruiting class. And he's the only top 3 recruit to ever go undrafted in the modern NBA, and the only top 3 recruit as well to not be drafted in the first round. So quite a fall from grace that he had coming out of high school where he was this highly touted prospect going to Kentucky. But look, He has pedigree. The skills are in there somewhere. He has the potential. There's a reason he was ranked that high. It's in there, and I think he can show that a little bit more now, getting these minutes and getting this opportunity. I'm not saying he's going to be some stud, some all-star player for the Sixers down the line, but I do think he's shown he's ready to contribute. And now with an NBA coaching staff and, seeing how NBA players work and develop their game and getting to work with NBA-level shooting coaches and trainers, his game is developing more than it was able to in just one short year in college. And he's showing, I'm ready to play. Nick Nurse, I deserve these minutes. And look, I have to agree with that. Nick Nurse, please, please, please keep this man in the rotation. I know Nick Nurse can kind of have a tendency to not play his young guys, even though he's seen some good stuff from them. We think about Ricky Council from last year getting inconsistent minutes. Like, he doesn't always give these guys their full opportunity when the injured players do return. But I think he's shown enough. And, man, this team's struggling anyways, even when they are fully healthy. Why not keep a player out there who's shown you he can be reliable, dependable on both sides of the floor, work well in the flow of the offense? It's not like he's demanding the ball to go out there and score 25 points. He's getting his shots up in the flow of the offense, making his threes, and playing solid defense. I might even play him over Ricky Council right now. I think he's just shown more, and he clearly has that ability again as a former 5-star, number 3 overall recruit. So love what I've seen from Justin Edwards. I hope he continues to get an opportunity to prove himself and keep showing that he belongs and that he shouldn't have been undrafted, and that every team that passed on him should regret not drafting him in last year's NBA draft. But you've heard enough from me. I've talked your ear off. I want to hear from you. In your opinion, has Justin Edwards earned real rotational minutes going forward when this team gets healthy? I would type my Y's for yes. I like what I've seen out of him. But you let me know in the comment section right now, Y for yes and for no, has Justin Edwards earned some real minutes moving forward? Now, coming up next on the show, we've talked about Justin Edwards. Still got to talk about Paul George, because very controversial season he's had. Obviously, a lot of Sixers fans very up and down on him, especially given the contract the Sixers signed him to. But he has been finding his rhythm as of late, which is good for the Sixers. Can he keep it up? I hope he can, because they're really going to need him to, with this difficult stretch they are in the midst of, if they want to continue to make a push for the playoffs. So we'll talk about that coming up on the back half of this show. But before we get to PG, I want to tell you guys about these great deals we have over at Fanatics. Plenty of 76ers hoodies available through our friends at Fanatics at chatsports.com/76hoodies. They come in all different styles, all different sizes. The weather's getting chilly out there right now, man. So a hoodie is the perfect thing for you to get right now. Rep your squad, even though you might not be super happy with what the Sixers have done this year and their organization. I understand. But look, if you want to support the show, you want to get some good gear for yourself or for a loved one, again, all different styles. This is one of my personal favorites right here, the old school script font, the 76 logo right there on the arm. It's nice. And a little bit of a switch up, little black and blue hoodie as well. So plenty different styles available, more than what I've just shown you here. Again, go to chatsports.com/76hoodies to let Fanatics know Chat Sports sent you, and get yourself swagged out in some 76ers hoodies. So now let's talk about Paul George. Over the last few games, he's really been a lot better. And I know Sixers fans are still frustrated with how he's played this season in the first year of that monster deal. But look, he's starting to find his shot. He's starting to play a little more aggressively. And that is obviously very beneficial and great news for the 76ers, because they need Paul George to be that guy, at least for right now, be that secondary scoring option until Joel Embiid comes back, if he ever does come back. And look, over his last 5 games, it's really been since the start of the new year, since the start of 2025. He's just looked a lot more comfortable in the offense and been a lot more efficient and effective. Over his last 5 games, 36.5 minutes, about 21 points, 7.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 42% from the field isn't great, but 41.3% from 3. That is what we're more accustomed to seeing from Paul George over his career, and he was not shooting that well, not even close to that well, over the first couple months of the season. So it's a good sign to see him being more efficient now from 3. But it's not just the efficiency. I'm more looking at the way he's playing the game and the way he's approaching the game on the offensive side of the ball. To me right now, he's not settling as much as he was earlier in the season, where it seemed like he was taking a lot of mid-range jumpers, right? He wasn't getting to the basket, wasn't taking as many threes as I'd like either. It seemed like he was settling a lot for these tough fadeaway, self-created mid-range jumpers, which, yes, they're a staple of his offensive game, but just not as effective and efficient of a shot as you'd like to see out of him. And right now, he's taken less mid. He's still taking some. It's always going to be a part of his game, right? But he's taken more threes, which I like to see out of him, and hitting them at a high rate. And he's also starting to attack the rim a little bit more, which is probably the biggest thing I want to see out of him because he's a great finisher at the rim, right? But he's got to be able to show that ability to blow by defenders and get to the basket and get those easy twos. And he wasn't really doing that over these past couple months, but now he started to do that more, and it's helping him be more efficient on the offensive end of the floor. And look, against the Knicks, he really helped bring this team back in the third quarter. It was looking bad there for the Sixers for a while, but they were able to make it close, especially with a big third quarter, and that was in a large part due to Paul George. Now, it wasn't all perfect against the Knicks, of course. He had just 3 points in the fourth quarter and overtime of that game. Now, a lot of that was because Tyrese Maxey was taking a lot of shots, and in overtime, nobody was really good on the Sixers, but they're not in that game if it's not for Paul George. Still, though, I would like to see him be a little more consistent still moving forward. Again, it's gotten better, but I think there's another level he can reach with his consistency and with his aggressiveness because, again, he's been more aggressive, but I would like to see him be more aggressive throughout the course of an entire game instead of just picking and choosing his spots. That can really, really take his game to the next level here in Philadelphia. And look, just call it what it is. It took him some time to adjust here in Philly, as it should and as should be expected, right? New team, new teammates, new coaching staff, new scheme. He's got to find his new place in the offense. And it took him a while to get adjusted to that, especially because, it's hard when players are constantly in and out of the lineup. And for Paul George, he didn't get off to the start he wanted because he was dealing with those injuries. And he's been in and out of the lineup here and there. So it's tough to establish a rhythm and find a groove when you're always being asked to play different roles on the offense, even when you're in there, because so many guys are out. I mean, he was playing center for a little bit. Like, that just is not his role. So it's tough for him to find that rhythm and find that shot. But now he's finally starting to settle in a little bit, which I like to see. And look, if this team can ever get fully healthy, and that's a big if, because they have not been fully healthy pretty much at all this season, I feel pretty good about his place in the offense and where he can impact the game and affect the game. So I think he's finally starting to see now the type of shots he wants to take. Nurse is finally starting to see where he wants Paul George to be on the court. He's developing more chemistry with his teammates. So I feel pretty good about his prospects if Embiid can get back on the floor and if this team can get fully healthy. And we talked on the show not too long ago about Paul George. Was he washed, right? Or was it just the injuries that were still bothering him and affecting him? And he talked about it a little bit about a week or so ago and said he still was dealing with some lingering effects from the hyperextensions and the bone bruise. But now, to me, this is a good sign because I'm seeing him attack the basket more and get by defenders a little bit more. What that tells me is, okay, maybe he's not totally washed. Maybe he really was just still dealing with some effects of those early season injuries. And maybe now he's finally starting to get over that hump and get over those injuries and play a little bit better and play more how he wants to play instead of having to settle for so many mid-range jumpers. Now, I get it. He still needs to be better. That contract is still a doozy. And we still want to see him affect the game at a higher rate and not foul out so much, by the way, because he's had some problems fouling out in some games as of late, or else his numbers might look even better. But look, what it comes down to, this team is still losing games, right? Still tougher losses to the Knicks and the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they've got a tough game against the Pacers coming up. So they still need to put it together, and he still needs to be able to translate those good performances into wins. But I like what I've seen from him, and I feel confident about him finding his game and continuing to find his rhythm moving forward. But as we do on the show, I want to hear from you. How do you feel about Paul George? Open-ended question here. You can let your thoughts on Paul George be known in the comment section right now. Are you frustrated with his play still? Are you confident he'll be able to keep playing well? Or do you think it's just a couple good games and he'll go back to being more inconsistent? I just want to know what Sixers fans' current pulse is on Paul George. So get in the comments. Let me know, and we'll catch you next time here on 76ers Now.